On paper, it sounded like a disaster waiting to happen. The premise was so controversial, it almost didn't make it past the pitch phase. Yet Hogan's Heroes somehow made it work, blending wartime tension with slapstick comedy to become a 1960s hit. Behind the scenes, the story is even stranger. A secret double life, a mysterious death, and a show unlike anything else on television. Today we're going back to a time when the Beatles dominated the pop charts, muscle cars lined suburban driveways, and anti-war protests were becoming impossible to ignore. This is No Signal. Think behind the music, but for classic television. The backstories, the network politics, the ratings drama, and the cultural forces at play. Let's get started. When Hogan's Heroes was originally pitched, CBS was extremely skeptical, to put it mildly. A comedy in a World War II prison camp? You can't be serious. But one of the show's co-creators, Al Ruddy, was anything but conventional. A former computer programmer with no television credits to his name, Ruddy saw potential in making the Nazis look ridiculous, not in mocking the war itself. Along with Bernard Fine, he convinced network executives to take a chance on a low-budget black and white pilot. During early testing, CBS had screened 2 cuts of Hogan's Heroes, one with a laugh track and one without. The response was telling. Only the version with canned laughter got any laughs. Without it, viewers didn't seem to know if they were supposed to find it funny. The laugh track became kind of a permission slip, signaling it was okay to laugh. That test screening sealed the show's tone going forward. Broad comedy, always buffered by the familiar rhythm of studio laughter. That same balancing act was baked into the show's very first moments. Even the opening credits were a risk. Cheerful, Allied prisoners saluting a bumbling Nazi officer while upbeat music played. On paper, it seemed tone-deaf, or worse. But the absurdity was intentional. The creators wanted to disarm the subject matter by making the Nazis look ridiculous from the very first frame. CBS rolled the dice. Hogan's Heroes became an instant top 10 hit, and the network quickly committed to producing all future episodes in color. A big jump from the original black and white pilot. The gamble had paid off. A sitcom set in a POW camp, backed by canned laughter and broad satire, had somehow struck a chord with American audiences. But not everyone was amused. In Germany, Hogan's Heroes was banned outright for decades due to its comedic portrayal of Nazi officers, a subject still far too raw for satire in post-war Europe. The idea of making light of the Third Reich, even through parody, was considered in extremely poor taste. The series didn't air in Germany until the 1990s, and even then, the characters were dubbed with exaggerated regional accents and broad comedic voices to clearly distance the show from reality. Colonel Klink, for example, was given a Saxon accent associated with foolishness, softening the edge of the satire for German viewers. While the show stirred debate abroad, back in Hollywood, its unexpected success was opening doors for one of its co-creators. In late 1969, while Hogan's Heroes was still on the air, Al Ruddy received a surprising call. Paramount wanted him to produce The Godfather. One of the most outrageous sitcoms on TV had just launched the career of the man behind cinema's greatest crime saga. Hogan's Heroes aired from 1965 to 1971, set in the fictional Stalag 13 German POW camp during World War II. But here's a twist. The prisoners weren't just surviving, they were secretly running a full-scale underground operation, constantly outwitting their bumbling Nazi captors. At the heart of Hogan's Heroes is Colonel Robert Hogan, played by Bob Crane. Crane had a quick wit, a polished charm, and a magnetic presence, both on camera and off. To audiences, he was Hogan. To CBS, he was a risk worth taking. Hogan was the mastermind behind the prisoners' covert operations, and his ability to manipulate Colonel Klink and Sergeant Schultz is pure comedic gold. From tunnel escapes to bumbling Nazis and Hogan's endless, calm smirk, The show built its identity on repeating gags that somehow kept working week after week. Before he became Colonel Hogan, Bob Crane was a radio star in Los Angeles, hosting a top-rated morning show on KNX for nearly a decade. There, he interviewed A-list celebrities like Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, and Bob Hope, showcasing his sharp wit and comic timing. Television was the natural next step in his career. His three-season run as Dr. Dave Kelsey on The Donna Reed Show led to guest spots on The Dick Van Dyke Show and Alfred Hitchcock Presents, paving the way for his big break on Hogan's Heroes. But behind the scenes, things weren't as lighthearted, especially for its star. After Hogan's Heroes was canceled, Crane struggled to recapture his earlier success. He appeared in a pair of forgettable Disney films, made guest appearances on shows like Policewoman and The Love Boat, and starred in a short-lived NBC sitcom, The Bob Crane Show. Around this time, he formed a close friendship with John Carpenter, a Sony Electronics sales rep who shared his interest in photography and cutting-edge tech, a connection that would eventually take a much darker turn. With his career in a downward spiral, Bob Crane's private life was becoming increasingly chaotic. A self-admitted sex addict since his radio days, he and friend John Carpenter reportedly used Crane's fame to meet women and secretly videotape their encounters, often without the women's knowledge. As public scrutiny grew, Crane began distancing himself from Carpenter and from the lifestyle they had built together. Not long after severing ties, Crane was found brutally murdered in his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment. He had been bludgeoned with what was believed to be a camera tripod with an electrical cord wrapped around his neck. Carpenter was later charged with the murder, but ultimately acquitted, and to this day, the case remains officially unsolved. If you'd like to learn more, I highly recommend the excellent film Autofocus, starring Greg Kinnear, which explores Crane's rise, fall, and the mystery surrounding his death. Colonel Clink, played by Werner Klemperer, was the very definition of comic incompetence, a pompous, clueless commandant, more obsessed with impressing his superiors than actually running the camp. Klemperer, who fled Nazi Germany as a child, only agreed to take the role if Clink was never shown as competent. "My father fled Hitler," he said. "I'm not about to make him look good." In real life, the German-born actor had quite a different story. During World War II, he served in the U.S. Army, and after the war, he built a career on Broadway and in television, with roles on classic shows like Perry Mason and Gunsmoke. After Hogan's Heroes ended, Klemperer returned to the stage where he found continued success and made occasional appearances on TV, always with the same signature dignity and sharp wit that made him a standout on the series. In 1993, he reprised a role he made famous in an episode of The Simpsons as Homer's guardian angel and spirit guide. John Banner's portrayal of Sergeant Schultz, the lovable, bumbling guard who famously sees nothing, hears nothing, and knows nothing, quickly became one of Hogan's Heroes' most iconic characters. Schultz's inner conflict between following orders and protecting the prisoners led to some of the show's funniest moments. Off-screen, Banner was a sharp and multilingual intellectual who initially studied law at the University of Vienna before turning to acting. After the Nazis annexed his homeland of Austria, Banner escaped to the United States through Europe in 1939. He appeared in more than 40 feature films and dozens of television shows before landing his career-defining role on Hogan's Heroes. After the show, Banner briefly starred in a short-lived sitcom and made his final screen appearance on The Partridge Family. Robert Clary, who played Corporal Louis LeBeau, brought both heart and humor to the role of the French prisoner and gourmet chef. Born in Paris to Jewish parents, Clary was the youngest of 14 children and the only family member to survive the Holocaust. Before his acting breakthrough, he sang on French radio and performed on Broadway. After the series, Clary appeared in World War II-themed films and became a soap opera regular on Days of Our Lives and The Bold and the Beautiful. Larry Hovis, as Sergeant Carter, was the explosive expert and frequent German impersonator with a goofy, lovable energy. Originally discovered by Andy Griffith's manager, Hovis appeared on Gomer Pyle USMC and The Andy Griffith Show before joining Hogan's Heroes. After the show ended, he became a writer for Rowan Martin's Laugh-In and guest hosted Liars Club. Fun fact, Hovis wore the same pair of pants for the entire series because his role was originally temporary. The studio never made duplicates, so he wore street clothes underneath in case of wardrobe emergencies. Ivan Dixon played Sergeant James Kinchlow, the calm and capable radio operator who coordinated with the underground resistance. He was the only main cast member who didn't stay for the show's entire run, leaving before the start of the final season. His character was replaced by a new radio operator, Sergeant Baker, played by Kenneth Washington. The change was never explained on screen, and for many fans, Kinchlow's absence marked the beginning of the end. Dixon had a strong film background before Hogan's Heroes and went on to become a respected director and producer in the 1970s and 80s, with credits on The Waltons, The Rockford Files, Magnum P.I., and In the Heat of the Night. Richard Dawson brought British flair to Corporal Peter Newkirk, a slick-talking forger and master of disguise. Dawson began his career in British television and radio, appearing in various BBC shows in the early 1950s. His comedic talent and stage presence quickly gained attention, leading to opportunities in the U.S. Though he originally auditioned for the role of Colonel Hogan, Dawson was cast as Newkirk in what would become his breakout role. He later appeared on shows like Love American Style, The Odd Couple, and McCloud. But his biggest career move came in 1973 when he joined the daytime game show Match Game. By 1976, he was hosting Family Feud, launching an entirely new chapter of fame. Leon Askin, who played the stern General Burkhalter, was born in Vienna and fled Austria during the Nazi annexation. After immigrating to the U.S., he found success on Broadway and in television, appearing in Bonanza, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and It Takes a Thief. Askin's chemistry with Colonel Klink, often treating him as a bumbling fool, added another layer of satire to the series. Howard Kane delivered an unforgettable performance as the intensely paranoid and hilariously explosive Major Hochstetter. Born in Nashville, Tennessee, Kane studied at Columbia University and served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He was also an accomplished banjo player and appeared on numerous TV classics like Get Smart, Gunsmoke, and Mission Impossible. Despite solid ratings and a loyal fan base, Hogan's Heroes ended abruptly in 1971 after 6 seasons. While the show was still popular, its cancellation had less to do with audience numbers and more to do with a major shift happening behind the scenes at CBS. The network was undergoing what's now known as a rural purge, a widespread cancellation of shows that appealed to older, rural, and small-town viewers in favor of programming aimed at younger, urban audiences. CBS wanted to rebrand itself as a more modern, sophisticated network to attract higher-paying advertisers. Even though Hogan's Heroes wasn't technically a rural show, it got caught in the same wave that took down Green Acres, the Beverly Hillbillies, and Mayberry RFD. The network was clearing the deck for a new kind of programming, shows like All in the Family, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and MASH. In that context, Hogan's Heroes suddenly felt like a throwback to a style of comedy CBS was ready to leave behind. Its cancellation wasn't about quality or ratings. It was about being on the wrong side of a cultural and corporate shift. In the mid-1980s, CBS briefly explored a reboot called The New Hogan's Heroes. But the idea stalled. The tone didn't fit the times. Audiences and the world had changed. CBS couldn't find the right angle. Recasting felt sacrilegious, and reunion wasn't realistic. Not with the cast aging and Bob Crane gone. There were also doubts. Would a lighthearted take on wartime captivity still work in the 1980s? So the idea was shelved. Hogan's Heroes stayed frozen in time, still syndicated, still beloved, but never revived. Its legacy? A show that dared to satirize the unthinkable, paving the way for series like MASH and Get Smart. Comedies that proved even war and espionage could be a stage for laughter as long as the message was sharp. So what's the verdict on Hogan's Heroes? A brilliant satire or a relic from another time? Imagine pitching a sitcom set in a post 9/11 detention center. Sounds unthinkable, right? So what's changed? Our humor? Our cultural boundaries? Or just the way we process tragedy over time? What do you remember most about Hogan's Heroes? Let me know in the comments below. This is No Signal, where every show has a story.